Something inside you knows you're failing. This is why you have clicked on this video. Not failing at a task, failing at existing. You've been running calculations in your head for years now, weighing risks, measuring outcomes, waiting for the perfect moment. And while you've been calculating, time has been devouring you. Not slowly, viciously. Every second you spend wondering if you're ready, someone else is moving. Every hour you spend doubting yourself, someone younger and hungrier is taking what could have been yours. Here's what they don't tell you. The clock isn't counting up. It's counting down. You think you have time. You think 30 is young. 40 is still plenty of runway. 50 is when things really come together. But Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, wrote in his private journals, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being dramatic. He was being honest. Death doesn't wait for your readiness. It doesn't care about your plans. And here you are, still planning. Every moment you've spent afraid, someone else has been becoming. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented. They simply decided that fear was a price they refused to pay. While you were protecting yourself from failure, they were collecting scars and building empires on top of them. You know this already. That's why you're still here. But knowing isn't enough. Knowledge without action is just decorated cowardice. You need something more violent than motivation. You need a philosophy that burns, one that won't let you sleep at night until you've taken the risks you've been avoiding. You need to build what warriors call balls of steel. Not arrogance, not recklessness, but a forged, unbreakable core that acts despite fear, that moves through doubt, that treats hesitation like the enemy it is. This isn't a gentle book. If you came here for permission to keep waiting, close this now. If you came here for comfort, you're in the wrong place. This is a confrontation with everything you've been lying to yourself about. This is about the years you've already lost, and the ones you're about to lose if you don't wake up. But here's the turn. You can still win. Not someday. Now. Today. This hour. The game isn't over until you're dead, and you're not dead yet. But you have to move like you understand what that means. You have to act like an immortal while remembering you're not. You have to build courage not as a feeling but as a practice. A daily, ruthless commitment to doing what terrifies you. The choice is binary and it's happening right now. Keep calculating and die having done nothing, or act and discover what you're actually capable of. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The lie you tell yourself. Self-doubt isn't real. It feels real. It has weight. It speaks with your voice, knows your fears, catalogues your failures. But it's still a fiction, a story you're telling yourself so convincingly that you've mistaken it for truth. Here's what doubt actually is: a prediction about a future that doesn't exist yet, narrated by a past that's already dead. Your doubt isn't wisdom. It's not intuition protecting you from disaster. It's a ghost wearing the mask of reason. Seneca understood this 2,000 years ago. "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," he wrote. Not sometimes. More. The catastrophe you're rehearsing in your mind, the rejection, the failure, the humiliation, is worse than anything that will actually happen. Your brain is running disaster simulations on repeat, and you're treating those simulations like documented facts. Think about the last opportunity you didn't take. Really think about it. What actually stopped you? Not external circumstances. You. What did you tell yourself? "I'm not ready yet." What if it doesn't work? "I need more experience first." "People will think I'm foolish." Those aren't reasons. They're escape routes. The psychology of hesitation is simple and devastating. Your brain is optimized for survival, not greatness. Evolutionarily, the cautious human survived. The one who waited, who avoided risk, who stayed with the tribe, that human passed on their genes. The bold one? They might have built something extraordinary, or they might have been eaten. Survival doesn't care about your potential, it cares about tomorrow. But you're not living in the savannah anymore. The threats aren't real, the lions are imaginary, and while your biology is screaming at you to stay safe, you're suffocating inside a life built on avoiding discomfort. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, asked himself, "What am I doing with my soul? Examine it. What inhabits it now?" Ask yourself that question right now. What inhabits your soul? Is it courage, or is it 100 different versions of maybe later? You sabotage yourself with stories that sound like wisdom. I need to be practical. Practical is a word people use when they mean afraid. I have responsibilities. Responsibilities are real, but they're also the favorite hiding place of cowards. The timing isn't right. The timing will never be right. Timing is another word for never. Here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Most people prefer their comfortable suffering to the uncertainty of change. They would rather spend decades wondering what if than risk finding out the answer. Because finding out requires action, and action requires temporarily being bad at something, being a beginner, being seen while imperfect. Your self-doubt isn't protecting you from failure, it's guaranteeing it. Every year you wait, you reinforce the neural pathways of hesitation. Your brain learns, when faced with opportunity, we retreat. That pattern deepens, it becomes your identity. You become the person who thinks about doing things, the person with potential, the person who was going to. Past tense, always past tense. But here's what they don't tell you about self-doubt. It's optional, not easy to remove, but optional. It's a habit, not a law of nature. You built it, and you can dismantle it. The way out isn't through affirmations or positive thinking or any of that shallow psychology. The way out is through action despite the feeling. You act while doubting. You move while afraid. You build evidence against the lie by doing the thing the lie says you can't do. Seneca again. It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. Read that again. Slower this time. The difficulty isn't in the thing. It's in your relationship to the thing. The mountain isn't insurmountable. Your belief that it is has made it so. Your doubt has created the very obstacle you're using to justify the doubt. This is the loop that traps people for entire lifetimes. You think you'll move when you feel ready, but readiness is a feeling that only comes after you've moved. Confidence is downstream of action, not upstream. You don't get confident and then do the thing. You do the thing badly, survive it, learn from it, and discover in the wreckage that you're more capable than your doubt claimed. The lie you tell yourself, that you're not ready, that it's too risky, that you need more time, isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you small, and small is a death that happens while you're still breathing. You have one move available to you right now. Stop believing the story. Not forever, not perfectly, just for the next 5 minutes. For the length of one decision, one action, one risk. What would you do if doubt wasn't real? Now go do that. Chapter 2. Time is hunting you. There's a predator behind you. You can't see it, but you can feel it. Some nights you lie awake and sense its presence. It's patient, relentless. It doesn't stop to rest. It doesn't negotiate. And it's closing the distance between you every single second you waste. Time isn't a resource, it's a hunter. Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Everything is moving, everything is dying. The version of you that existed yesterday is already gone. The opportunities available to you today won't be here tomorrow. The body you have now, the mind you have now, The people in your life now, all of it is actively deteriorating while you decide whether to act. You think you're standing still. You're not. You're being carried toward the end. The average human lifespan is about 4,000 weeks. Not years, weeks. 4,000 Mondays, 4,000 chances to wake up and choose differently. Except you're not at week 0 anymore. If you're 30, you're past 1d500. If you're 40, you're past 2,000. Half the game is already over. More than half probably, because those first 1,500 weeks, you weren't in control of them. You were being raised, educated, formed by systems and people who had their own agendas. So how many weeks do you actually have left where you're young enough, healthy enough, sharp enough to do the thing you keep putting off? Maybe 1,000, maybe 500, and you're spending them afraid. Here's the mathematics of mortality. Every year you hesitate is a year you don't get back. This isn't metaphorical. When you're on your deathbed, and you will be on your deathbed, you won't remember the risks you didn't take fondly. You'll remember them like open wounds. You'll think about the business you didn't start, the person you didn't approach, the art you didn't make, the life you didn't live because you were waiting for a guarantee that never came. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." People act like time is stolen from them. It isn't. They give it away. They give it to fear, to doubt, to comfort, to distraction. They spend years preparing for a life they never actually live. You know what's irrational? Being afraid of risk while facing the certainty of death. Think about that. You're terrified of starting a business because it might fail, but you're going to die anyway. You're afraid of being rejected because it might hurt, but time is going to take everything from you regardless. Your youth, your health, everyone you love. The pain you're avoiding is nothing compared to the pain of reaching the end and realizing you never actually tried. This is the dark mathematics that fear doesn't want you to calculate. The worst-case scenario of taking the risk is still infinitely better than the guarantee of not taking it. Because even if you fail spectacularly, at least you have a story. At least you tested your limits. At least you lived for a moment instead of spectating your own existence. Heraclitus also said, "Time is a child playing dice." It's not on your side. It doesn't care about your plans or your excuses or your potential. It's indifferent. It keeps moving. And while you've been rehearsing your life in your head, it's been burning through your days like a child burning ants with a magnifying glass, without malice, without purpose, just because it can. Every morning you wake up is a morning someone else didn't. Every year you're healthy is a year someone else lost to sickness. Every day you have the capacity to take a risk is a day that won't repeat. Time isn't giving you chances, it's giving you a countdown, and the clock doesn't care if you waste it. You want to know what fear of risk really is? It's arrogance. It's the belief that you have so much time that you can afford to wait, that you can spend a decade getting ready and still have decades left to execute, that you can keep pushing the big move to next year and next year and next year, and somehow death won't come for you the way it comes for everyone else. But it will, and when it does, all those careful calculations, all that strategic waiting, all those perfectly preserved opportunities you never touched, they'll mean nothing. Marcus Aurelius spent his nights writing reminders to himself about death. Not because he was morbid, because he was awake. He knew that remembering mortality was the only way to live urgently. "Don't let the panorama of your life oppress you," he wrote. "Don't dwell on all the things that might go wrong. Stay focused on the present situation and ask yourself, why is this unbearable? Why can't I endure it?" The answer is, you can. You can endure the risk. You can endure the failure. You can endure the judgment. What you can't endure is the decades of regret that follow a life spent hiding from your own potential. Time is hunting you. It's faster than you. It's smarter than you. It's going to catch you eventually. The only question is, when it does, what will it find? A person who lived, who risked, who burned bright even if they burned out. Or someone who spent their whole life in the waiting room, clutching a ticket that never got called. Choose now, because now is all you have. Now is all you've ever had. Chapter 3. The Prison of Self-doubt. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of discovery. What you call self-doubt is actually the fear of finding out who you really are when the protections are stripped away. Because right now, you can still tell yourself stories about your potential. I could do that if I really tried. I'm capable of great things. I just haven't had the right opportunity. I'm smart enough, talented enough. I just need the right moment. Those stories keep you safe. As long as you never test them, they can stay beautiful and intact. You can live your whole life in the glow of your imagined potential, never having to confront the reality of your actual capabilities. But here's what you know and won't admit. Those stories are chains. Nietzsche saw through this with surgical precision. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, he wrote. To be your own man is a hard business. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Society doesn't want you to own yourself. It wants you manageable, predictable, safe. It conditions you from birth to value security over sovereignty, comfort over courage, acceptance over authenticity. It teaches you to ask for permission before you act, to check with others before you trust yourself, to wait for validation before you move. And you absorbed it all. You learned to be careful. You learned that standing out is dangerous, that failure is shameful, that taking a risk without guaranteed success is foolish. You learned to chain yourself to the opinion of people whose names you won't even remember in 5 years. The prison of self-doubt isn't locked from the outside. You're the guard and the prisoner. Every time you stop yourself from speaking up, you're reinforcing the bars. Every time you make yourself smaller to fit into someone else's expectations, you're adding another lock. Every time you choose the safe path because that's what's realistic, you're carving your cell deeper into stone. And the cruelest part, you've gotten comfortable in there. The prison is familiar. It's predictable. You know exactly how much life you're allowed to want within these walls. Not too much, just enough to survive, enough to look like you're trying without actually risking anything real. Nietzsche, again. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But you've inverted this. You've spent so long focusing on the how, the perfect strategy, the right timing, the safe approach, that you've forgotten the why. Or worse, you never found it. Because finding a real why would require you to want something badly enough that you'd risk failing to get it. Self-doubt doesn't keep you humble. It keeps you imprisoned. It tells you, who are you to try? What makes you think you're special? You'll probably fail anyway. People will laugh at you. You're not as talented as you think. And you listen. You nod along. You agree with the voice that's been systematically destroying your life. Here's what that voice is really saying. Stay small, stay safe. Don't test yourself. Don't discover your limits. Don't risk finding out that you're capable of more than this. Because that's the real threat, isn't it? Not failure, success. If you try and fail, at least the story holds. But if you try and succeed, then you have to face what you've been avoiding. You've been capable all along. The only thing stopping you was you. All those years of waiting, of preparing, of not being ready yet, they were just elaborate excuses. Ornate prisons you built yourself. Schopenhauer wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see, but you're not even aiming. You're standing in the dark with your eyes closed, telling yourself you're being strategic. The conditioning runs deep. You've been taught that confidence without credentials is arrogance. That action without perfect information is reckless. That ambition beyond your station is delusion. Every institution you've ever been part of, school, work, family, society, has trained you to know your place and stay in it. And you have. But here's the break in the conditioning. Knowing it exists is the first crack in the wall. You can't unsee it now. Every time you feel that pull to play small, you'll recognize it for what it is. Not wisdom, not realism, but programming. Someone else's agenda running in your head like malware. You can choose to keep running it. Most people do. They live entire lives executing someone else's code, following rules they never agreed to, pursuing goals that were installed in them by others. Or you can start debugging. Nietzsche's hammer. You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. There is no manual, there is no permission slip, there is no authority that can tell you whether your ambition is justified or your risk is worth taking. There's only this. You, standing at the door of your cell, realizing it's been unlocked the entire time. The prison of self-doubt doesn't need to be stormed. It needs to be walked out of. One step, one decision, one moment where you choose your judgment over the tribunal in your head. What happens when you leave? Maybe you fail, maybe you stumble, maybe you discover you're not as immediately brilliant as you hoped. But you also discover something else. You're free. And freedom, even with its scars and uncertainties, is infinitely more valuable than a comfortable cell. Nietzsche, one final time. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. As well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. Cast the skin, break the conditioning, leave the prison, or die in it, still convinced you are just being reasonable. Chapter 4. Fear is a drug. You're addicted to fear, not the useful kind, not the fear that makes you look both ways before crossing the street. The other kind, the kind that masquerades as caution, but is actually just your brain getting high on its own neurochemistry. Every time you avoid a risk, your brain rewards you. A little hit of relief, a small dose of comfort. You're safe now, it whispers. You made the smart choice. And you feel, not good exactly, but safe, which is close enough to good that you keep going back for more. This is how the addiction works. Your brain evolved to prioritize survival over everything else. In a world of predators and scarcity, this was brilliant programming. Avoid the risk, survive another day, pass on your genes. But you're not in that world anymore. You're in a world where the biggest threat to your existence is not taking enough risks, where playing it safe guarantees not death by predator, but death by mediocrity, a slow suffocation while your potential rots unused. But your brain doesn't care. It's still running Stone Age software in a digital age world. It still floods you with cortisol and anxiety whenever you approach uncertainty. It still screams danger when you think about starting the business, asking for the promotion, making the move. Not because the danger is real, because that's what it was built to do. And you keep listening. Because the drug feels like wisdom. Fear tells you it's keeping you alive. But here's what it's actually doing. Keeping you numb, keeping you small, keeping you inside the narrow range of experiences where nothing surprising can happen. No great failures, sure, but no great anything. Schopenhauer understood this. The majority of men are not capable of thinking, but only of believing, and are not accessible to reason, but only to authority. Most people don't examine their fear. They just obey it. Fear says don't do that, and they don't do that. No questions asked. The addiction is so complete they don't even realize they're using. Think about the last week. How many decisions did fear make for you? Not obvious terror, just that slight discomfort, that subtle resistance, that voice suggesting, maybe not this time. How many conversations didn't you start? How many ideas didn't you share? How many opportunities didn't you pursue because somewhere in your nervous system an ancient alarm went off and you listened? You've outsourced your decision-making to a mechanism that thinks you're still hiding from predators in the tall grass, and you call this being realistic. The neural pathway works like this. Opportunity appears, uncertainty registers, fear spikes, avoidance behavior, relief hits, pathway strengthens. Every single time you choose safety over risk, you're deepening the groove. You're teaching your brain that fear is an authority to be obeyed, not a signal to be evaluated. And like any addiction, you need increasing doses to get the same effect. The comfort zone shrinks. What felt like a reasonable boundary last year now feels like a prison, but you can't escape because every time you approach the edge, the withdrawal hits. Anxiety, doubt, that feeling in your chest that says, turn back, and you do. Every time you do. Here's the truth that will sound harsh, but is actually liberating. Your fear is lying to you almost all the time. Not about everything. If you're standing at the edge of a cliff, fear is giving you good information. But when it tells you not to send the email, not to start the project, not to have the conversation, not to take the leap, that's not information. That's addiction. Your brain trying to keep you dependent on the drug of safety. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." He's telling you the threat isn't real. Your interpretation of it as a threat is what's hurting you, and that interpretation, it's optional. But breaking the addiction requires something most people won't do. You have to start acting against the fear before it goes away. You have to do the thing while still feeling afraid. You have to send the email with shaking hands. Start the project with doubt in your chest. Have the conversation while your heart pounds. This is the only way out. Not around the fear, through it. Because here's what happens when you act despite fear. Nothing. Or rather, not nothing, but not what fear promised. You don't die. You don't get destroyed. You might fail. You might get rejected. You might discover you're not as immediately brilliant as you hoped. But you survive. And in surviving, you collect evidence against the addiction. Your brain learns, we did the scary thing and we're still here. The pathway weakens slightly. Not gone, weakened. Do it again, and it weakens more, again and more. Eventually, the thing that terrified you becomes merely uncomfortable, then challenging, then weirdly energizing. You start getting high on a different drug, progress. Seneca saw this. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The suffering happens in your head, where you're running simulations of disaster. But reality? Reality is almost always more manageable than your fear-soaked imagination. The addiction to fear keeps you in simulation mode, always rehearsing, always preparing, always one more step away from ready. Because being ready would mean having to act, and acting would mean losing access to the drug. So you stay comfortable in your discomfort. Miserable, but familiar. Afraid, but at least safely afraid. But you can feel it, can't you? That other thing. That pull towards something more. That voice that occasionally breaks through the fear and says, what if we just tried? That's not naivety. That's not recklessness. That's the part of you that isn't addicted yet. The part that remembers you're capable of more than hiding. Fear isn't your enemy. It's just a very, very bad advisor. It has one tool, avoidance, and it applies that tool to every situation. But you're not a prisoner to it. You're not its subject. You're a consciousness that can observe the fear, Acknowledge it, thank it for its input, and then choose differently. This is the work, noticing the fear without obeying it, feeling it fully without letting it decide, acting despite it until the neural pathways rewire and the addiction loosens its grip. Will this be comfortable? No. Withdrawal never is. Will this be easy? Not even close. But here's what it will be. Liberating, because on the other side of fear as authority is you as sovereign, making choices based on what you want, not what you're afraid of. Building a life that's yours, not one that fear designed to keep you manageable. The drug wants you to stay. It will fight. It will tell you this is dangerous, that you're making a mistake, that you should just wait a little longer until the fear subsides. Don't wait. The fear never subsides until after you move, and by then you won't need it to. Chapter 5. The Courage of the Immortal Mindset. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Wrong question. Better one. What would you do if you knew failure was temporary, but regret was permanent? The immortal mindset isn't delusion. It's not pretending you're invincible or that consequences don't exist. It's something sharper. It's living as if you have infinite attempts but finite time. It's the recognition that you can survive almost anything except a life unlived. Stoic warriors understood this. Roman generals, Japanese samurai, Viking raiders. They didn't avoid fear. They ritualized it. They stared at death until it became familiar. They practiced dying in their minds so that when the moment came to risk everything, they could act without hesitation. Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk, not as decoration, as technology, a constant reminder that he too would become that. Emperor of Rome, philosopher king, most powerful man in the known world, none of it would save him. And if death was coming anyway, what was there to be afraid of? This is the secret of the immortal mindset. When you truly accept mortality, you become functionally immortal in your decision-making, not because you can't die, because you realize that preserving your life at the cost of never living it is the same as being dead, just slower, more boring. The courage this creates isn't recklessness. Recklessness is unconscious. It's not seeing the danger. Courage is seeing the danger perfectly clearly and moving anyway because the alternative is worse. Think about the risks you haven't taken. Really examine them. What's the actual worst case? Not your fears version, the real one. You start the business and it fails. You ask for the raise and get rejected. You create the art and people hate it. You pursue the relationship and get hurt. Now add time to the equation. 5 years after the failure, where are you? Dead? No. Destroyed? No. You're somewhere else, trying something else, carrying lessons from the attempt. The failure isn't permanent. It's just expensive. It costs pride. It costs comfort. It costs the story you told yourself about who you are. But you know what's more expensive? 5 years of wondering. 5 years of what if. 5 years of watching other people live while you spectate. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." You have enough intelligence, enough resources, enough time, barely, but enough. What you're craving is certainty, guarantee, a promise that if you take the risk, it will work out. That promise doesn't exist. It never has. Not for you, not for anyone. Every single person who ever built something meaningful did it without knowing how it would end. They acted in uncertainty. They moved in the dark. They risked failure because they understood something you're still learning. Failure is an event. Cowardice is a life. The immortal mindset requires a brutal acceptance. You're going to fail anyway, multiple times, embarrassingly, publicly, probably. The question isn't whether you'll fail, It's whether you'll fail while trying to build something or while trying to avoid looking foolish. Here's how you build it. First, practice the death meditation. Every morning, remind yourself you're going to die. Not morbidly, practically. This body will stop. This consciousness will end. All the opinions people have about you will evaporate. All the fears you're protecting will become irrelevant. Let that sink in until it changes how you see today's risks. Second, reframe failure as data. Scientists don't succeed and fail. They experiment. Every result is information. Every attempt teaches something. You're not risking your life. You're collecting evidence about what works. Some experiments succeed, some don't. Both advance the research. Third, build anti-fragility. Nassim Taleb's concept, systems that gain from stress. Don't just survive failure, use it. Every rejection makes you harder to reject. Every setback teaches you to recover faster. You're not just risking, you're deliberately stress testing yourself until you become unbreakable. Fourth, act as if courage is a muscle, because it is. You don't develop courage by thinking about it. You develop it by doing small, frightening things until they're not frightening anymore, then doing bigger ones. Start with the email you're afraid to send, then the conversation, then the leap. Each act strengthens the muscle. Fifth, understand the math. You need one success to change everything. One. But you might need 50 attempts to get there. Most people stop at attempt 3. They try something, it doesn't work. They try again, it doesn't work. They try once more, and then conclude, it's not meant to be. That's not fate. That's just statistics. You're still in the early sample size. The immortal mindset isn't positive thinking. It's clear thinking. It's seeing that the downside of action is limited and temporary, while the downside of inaction is unlimited and permanent. It's understanding that you can recover from almost any failure, but you can't recover from a life where you never tried. Heraclitus said, out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there, 80 are just targets, 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. Be the one. Not because you're special, because you decided that living cautiously while mortality hunts you is the actual insanity, because you chose to act like an immortal, testing limits, taking risks, building things that might fail, while staying awake to the fact that you're not, that this is it. This is your one chance. The immortal mindset doesn't make you invincible. It makes you free, free from the tyranny of others' opinions, free from the paralysis of perfectionism, free from the lie that you have enough time to wait. You don't, but you have enough time to move. So move, like you can't fail, like failure is just tuition, like you're immortal, and remember, with every step, that you're not. Chapter 6. Risk is the only path. Every single thing worth having sits on the other side of risk. Not some things, everything. The relationship you want, the career you dream about, the body you envision, the art you're not making, the freedom you crave. All of it requires you to walk into uncertainty and stay there until something shifts. There is no safe path to an exceptional life. That's not pessimism, it's mathematics. Safety is by definition the territory everyone can access. It's the common ground, the well-traveled road. If you can get there without risk, so can everyone else, which means it's crowded, competitive, mediocre by default. Greatness, however you define it, lives in the territory that most people won't enter. And the barrier to entry is the same every time. Risk. Machiavelli understood this with cold precision. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. You need both. the intelligence to see the risks clearly, and the courage to take them anyway. Most people have one or the other. Intelligence without courage becomes paralysis by analysis. Courage without intelligence becomes reckless stupidity. You need both. But here's the bias you must develop. When in doubt, move. Because the cost of smart inaction is worse than the cost of imperfect action. Every day you spend calculating is a day someone with half your intelligence and twice your courage is building. They're failing, yes. They're learning, definitely. And they're slowly, methodically, lapping you while you're still at the whiteboard, drawing perfect plans. Let's get specific about what risk actually costs. Starting the business might fail. You lose money, time, and pride. 5 years later, you're working somewhere else with battle scars and wisdom. Not starting it, you spend the next 40 years wondering. Every success story you hear becomes a knife. Every "I wish I had" becomes a tombstone for your potential. Asking for the raise might get rejected. Awkward conversation, uncomfortable for a week. Not asking. You stay underpaid for years, growing more bitter each month, building resentment toward people who owe you nothing because you never made the ask. Creating the art might get criticized, might flop. People might not understand it. Not creating it, the art dies with you. That voice that needed to speak goes silent forever. You spend your final decades wondering what you had inside you that never got out. See the pattern? Risk costs temporarily. Avoiding risk costs permanently. Nietzsche saw this. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. You think you're preserving yourself by avoiding risk. You're not. You're calcifying, hardening into a person who can't adapt, can't grow, can't become. The snake that won't shed its skin doesn't stay the same, it dies. But there's another dimension to this. Risk isn't just about what you gain, it's about who you become. Every time you take a risk, you prove something to yourself, not to others, to yourself. You prove that you're the kind of person who acts despite fear, who moves despite doubt, who chooses growth over comfort. That identity compounds. Take enough risks and you become someone who defaults to action. Someone who sees uncertainty as opportunity rather than threat. Someone who other people look at and think, how are they so fearless? The secret? They're not. They just built a different relationship with fear through repeated exposure. Meanwhile, every risk you don't take also compounds. You become someone who defaults to caution, someone who sees opportunity and immediately catalogues reasons it won't work, someone whose first response to possibility is, yes, but. You become your own worst obstacle, not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself into paralysis. Here's what almost no one tells you. Taking risks gets easier. Not because the risks get smaller, because you get stronger. The first time you put yourself out there, it feels like dying. The 10th time, it feels like discomfort. The 100th time, it feels like Tuesday. You're building calluses, psychological armor. Not so thick that you become numb, but thick enough that criticism doesn't shatter you. Failure doesn't end you. Rejection doesn't define you. Seneca again. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. You think you're preserving yourself by avoiding trials. You're not. You're staying soft, fragile. One sharp word away from collapse. One setback away from quitting. Risk is the friction that polishes you. Every attempt, every failure, every time you get back up, you're not just pursuing outcomes, you're forging yourself, turning from soft metal into steel. Think about the people you admire, not celebrities, real people you actually respect. What do they have in common? They took risks. They tried things that might not work. They put themselves in positions where failure was possible. They didn't wait for permission or guarantees. They moved. And what about the people you don't respect? The ones who complain but never act, who talk about what they'd do if only. They're not stupid. They're not even unlucky. They're just risk-averse. They chose safety and got exactly what safety promises. Nothing. You know which group you want to be in. The question is whether you'll pay the price of admission. Because here's the final truth about risk. You can't negotiate it down. You can't get the results of courage while paying the price of cowardice. The universe doesn't round up. You get what you earn, and earning anything worthwhile requires putting something real on the line. Your reputation, your comfort, your pride, your current identity, all of it has to go into the pot if you want to play for real stakes. Machiavelli, one more time. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Not because the difficulties shrink, because your willingness makes you capable of moving through them, the willingness to risk, to fail, to be embarrassed, to try again. That willingness is the only currency that buys anything worth having. So what's the risk you've been avoiding? Not the small one, the real one, the one that would change everything if it worked, the one you keep pushing to next quarter, next year, when things settle down. Things never settle down. That's the point. Life is turbulent by design. If you're waiting for calm waters to set sail, you'll die in port. Take the risk. Today, this week, before the year ends. Not perfectly, not safely, not with all the answers. Just take it. Because choosing safety isn't choosing nothing. It's choosing regret. Guaranteed, inevitable, corrosive regret. And you deserve better than that. Chapter 7. Build your iron heart. Emotional resilience isn't a trait you're born with. It's a structure you build, deliberately, brutally, one failure at a time. What people call balls of steel isn't anatomy. It's architecture. It's the systematic construction of a psychological core that can withstand impact, that can take criticism and not shatter, that can face failure and not fracture, that can be rejected, judged, dismissed, and still wake up the next morning ready to move. This is what separates the people who achieve from the people who dream. Not talent, not luck, not even opportunity. It's the capacity to absorb damage and keep functioning, to take hits that would flatten most people and treat them like weather, uncomfortable but temporary. Marcus Aurelius built his iron heart through daily practice. Every night, he wrote in his journals, reminders to himself about what mattered and what didn't. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. This wasn't denial. This was training, teaching himself that harm is mostly interpretation, that what breaks most people is not the event, but their relationship to the event. You can train this too. First, develop emotional indifference to failure. Not numbness, indifference. Failure happens and you acknowledge it. That didn't work. What did I learn? No drama, no identity crisis, no weeks of recovery. You look at it the way a scientist looks at a failed experiment. Interesting data. Now what's next? This requires practice. You have to fail enough times that it stops feeling like death and starts feeling like information. Most people quit before they reach this point. They fail twice and conclude they're not cut out for it. You need to fail through that conclusion 10 times, 20, until failure becomes so familiar that it loses its power to stop you. Second, build detachment from others' opinions. This is harder. Your brain is wired to care what the tribe thinks. It's survival programming from when exile meant death. But you're not in that world anymore. Someone thinking you're foolish doesn't kill you. Someone laughing at your attempt doesn't end you. Their opinions are just noise. Schopenhauer. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. The iron heart requires periods of deliberate solitude, time away from the chorus of opinions, time with your own thoughts, time to build conviction that isn't dependent on consensus. Practice this. Do something small that might be judged. Post the unpolished work. Share the controversial opinion. Wear the unusual outfit. Not to be contrarian, to practice, to expose yourself to judgment and discover you survive it. Do this enough, and the opinions of strangers become background noise. Third, master the ability to act despite fear. Fear will never completely disappear. That's not the goal. The goal is to make fear irrelevant to your decision-making process. Feel the fear. Acknowledge it. Thank it for trying to keep you safe. Then do the thing anyway. This is the core of emotional resilience, the capacity to override your nervous system with your will. Your body says, danger. Your mind says, not real danger, just unfamiliarity. Your will says, we're doing this anyway. That gap between feeling and action, that's where the iron heart lives. Fourth, develop mental toughness through voluntary discomfort. Physical training builds this. Cold showers, hard exercise, fasting. Not for physical results, for psychological ones. You're teaching yourself, I can be uncomfortable and survive. I can be in pain and not quit. I can want to stop and keep going. This generalizes. The person who can finish the last mile when their body is screaming is the same person who can finish the difficult project when their motivation is gone. The capacity is transferable. Fifth, practice rejection seeking. This sounds insane, but it's transformative. Deliberately seek small rejections. Ask for things you might not get. Make offers that might be refused. Apply for opportunities you're not sure you're qualified for. Not to succeed, to desensitize, to prove to yourself that rejection is survivable, boring even. Most people spend their lives avoiding rejection. You need to collect it, like badges, because every rejection you survive weakens its power over you. Eventually, you reach a point where someone saying no means nothing. It's just information about their needs, not a referendum on your worth. Seneca understood this. He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary. Most of your suffering happens in anticipation. The dread before the conversation, the anxiety before the attempt, the worry about what might happen. But when the thing actually happens, you handle it. You always have. The suffering was all in the preview, not the event. The iron heart is built by repeatedly proving this to yourself, by doing the thing you dread and discovering it wasn't that bad, by surviving what you thought would destroy you, by accumulating evidence that you're more resilient than your fear believes. Sixth, understand that consistency beats intensity. One brutal rejection won't build you. 100 small ones will. One massive failure won't forge you. 20 modest ones will. The iron heart isn't created in a moment of crisis. It's created through repeated exposure to manageable stress. This is why you need to be seeking these experiences, not waiting for them to happen, not hoping you'll be tested, deliberately putting yourself in positions where you might fail, be rejected, look foolish, or discover your limits. The people with iron hearts aren't special. They're not born different. They just practiced in the areas where you're still avoiding practice. Seventh, build an identity independent of outcomes. This is the final piece. You're not your successes or your failures. You're not your wins or your losses. You're the person who attempts, the person who risks, the person who keeps moving regardless of results. Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every obstacle is just resistance training. Every difficulty is just another rep. You're not trying to avoid these things. You're using them to build the structure that lets you keep going when everyone else has quit. This is what balls of steel actually means. Not fearlessness. Fear is involuntary. But fear independence, the capacity to feel afraid and move anyway, to feel doubt and act anyway, to feel pain and continue anyway. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming strong. Strong enough that the hits that would flatten most people just make you adjust your stance. Build this. Deliberately, daily, one uncomfortable decision at a time, one rejection at a time, one failure at a time, because on the other side of enough failures, you become unfailable, not because you don't fail, because failure no longer has the power to stop you. And that's when you become truly dangerous. Chapter 8. The Fire That Burns Behind You. While you're reading this, someone younger than you just started. They don't have your experience, they don't have your knowledge, they don't have your carefully accumulated wisdom. What they have is time, hunger, and the recklessness that comes from having nothing to lose. And they're moving. They're not planning. They're not preparing. They're not waiting to be ready. They're out there making mistakes, learning from them, and iterating while you're still strategizing. And every day you wait, they gain ground. This isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to wake you up. You're in a race you didn't sign up for, and the starting gun went off years ago. Every person in your field, your market, your domain, they're all running. Some are ahead. Many are behind. But they're running. And you're standing still, convinced that perfect preparation is the same as progress. It's not. Heraclitus. No man ever steps in the same river twice. But here's what he didn't say. While you're deciding whether to step in, the river moves past you. The opportunities that exist today won't exist tomorrow. The market position available right now will be occupied by someone else next year. The person you could have been if you'd started 3 years ago, there's someone else now. Someone who moved. There's a fire behind you. You can feel it sometimes, late at night, when the rationalizations quiet down. It's not imaginary. It's the heat of everyone else's effort, everyone else's courage, everyone else's willingness to risk what you're still protecting. And it's getting closer. Think about where you were 5 years ago. What were you planning to do? What were you about to start? What were you waiting for the right time to begin? Now, think about someone who started that thing 5 years ago. Where are they now? What have they built while you've been planning? That gap, that's the cost of hesitation, not in abstract terms, in real terms. Real skills they developed, real relationships they built, real value they created, real money they earned, real reputation they established, while you were being careful. Nietzsche saw this with characteristic brutality. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. But you're not even walking. You're still reading the manual on standing. And someone who started running years ago is now learning to dance. You want the honest truth? You're behind. Not fatally behind, but behind. And the gap widens with every day you choose comfort over action, safety over risk, preparation over execution. But here's the twist that makes this both terrifying and liberating. They're also behind someone. The person chasing you is being chased. The person ahead of you is being hunted. Everyone is running from someone and chasing someone else. The game never stops. The pressure never releases. So the question isn't whether to run. You're running whether you acknowledge it or not. The question is, are you running forward or are you running in place? Because there's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from working hard at staying still, from spending energy on maintenance rather than movement, from using all your intelligence to justify inaction rather than to create results. That exhaustion, that's what you're feeling. That's the fire at your back, not their success, your own stagnation. Marcus Aurelius, confine yourself to the present, but the present demands action, not thought, not planning. Action. The person behind you isn't thinking about catching up, they're catching up through action, through mistakes, through failing faster than you're succeeding slowly. Here's what makes them dangerous. They know they're behind. They're using it as fuel. They're not comfortable. They're not established. They're hungry. And hunger is a competitive advantage you've forgotten you once had. Remember when you started? Remember that energy, that drive, that willingness to do whatever it took? What happened to that? You got comfortable. You accumulated reasons to be careful. You developed a reputation to protect. You acquired responsibilities to maintain. You built a life that requires you to be safe. And somewhere along the way, you stopped being dangerous. The person chasing you hasn't made those mistakes yet. They're still lean, still hungry, still willing to risk everything because they don't have much to risk. They're running scared, which means they're running fast. What are you running on? Momentum, past achievements, the fading glow of what you used to be capable of. That won't hold. Momentum degrades. Past achievements depreciate. What you did 5 years ago matters less every single day. What matters is, what are you doing now? Not planning to do, not preparing to do, actually doing. Seneca. We are not given a short life, but we make it short. We are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it. You have time, barely, but you have it. Enough to make a move, enough to take a risk, enough to start the thing you've been talking about. But you need to understand, every day you don't move, someone else does. Every opportunity you don't take, someone else will. Every risk you don't accept, someone younger and hungrier is accepting right now. The fire behind you isn't slowing down, it's accelerating, fed by the energy of everyone who decided that doing something imperfectly is better than planning something perfectly that never happens. So here's your choice, presented with all the gentleness it deserves. Move. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when conditions improve. Now. Start the project. Make the ask. Take the leap. Do it badly. Do it scared. Do it without knowing how it ends. But do it. Because the alternative, continuing to strategize while others execute, isn't preserving your position. It's surrendering it, slowly, invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize you're no longer where you thought you were. Someone passed you, multiple someones, and they did it while you were busy being careful. The fire is still behind you, getting closer, hotter. You can keep feeling it at your back, letting it pressure you into paralysis, or you can turn around, acknowledge it, and use it as fuel to finally move faster than you're being chased. The choice has always been yours, but the time to make it is running out. Chapter 9. Action is the only cure. You think too much, not about important things, about action. You think about whether to act, how to act, when to act, what the perfect way to act might be. You've spent more time thinking about action than most people spend acting, and it's killing you. Not dramatically, slowly. The way rust kills metal, the way dust suffocates abandoned rooms. You're deteriorating through disuse, and you've convinced yourself that all this thinking is productivity. It's not. It's procrastination wearing the mask of wisdom. Seneca saw through this 2,000 years ago. While we wait for life, life passes. But it's worse than that. While you wait for clarity, for readiness, for the perfect plan, everyone else is already building. Learning through doing what you're trying to learn through thinking. And here's the devastating truth. You can't think your way to courage. You can't strategize your way to confidence. You can't plan your way to competence. These things only come through action, through doing the thing badly until you can do it well, through failing publicly until you know how to succeed publicly. The cure for doubt is not more thinking, it's less. The cure for fear is not more preparation, it's action despite preparation being incomplete. Think about learning to swim. You can read every book about swimming, study the biomechanics, watch videos, understand the theory perfectly. None of that puts you in the water. None of that teaches your body how it feels to be buoyant, to breathe while moving, to coordinate arms and legs while your nervous system screams about drowning. You learn to swim by getting in the water and thrashing until it becomes rhythm. There's no other path. Knowledge without practice is decoration. The same applies to everything you're avoiding. The business, the art, the relationship, the move. You can study it forever. Or you can do it once and learn more in 1 hour than you would in a year of study. But you keep choosing study. Why? Because study feels like progress without requiring risk. You can accumulate knowledge, attend workshops, read case studies, follow experts, all while staying perfectly safe. And your brain loves this. It gets the dopamine hit of working on something without the cortisol spike of actually being vulnerable. This is the trap. Preparation becomes its own end. You're not preparing to act. You're preparing instead of acting. The preparation is the point. Because as long as you're preparing, you can't fail. You're still in the safe zone, still in the realm of potential. Marcus Aurelius: do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit. But you're wasting it speculating about yourself, analyzing your readiness, questioning your capabilities, running simulations of failure. Stop. Here's what you do instead. Pick one thing, one risk, one action, the one you've been thinking about for months or years, the one that would change things if it worked. Not the safe one, not the practice one, the real one. And do it. Today, this week, before this month ends. Not perfectly, not with all the answers, not when you feel ready, now. Because readiness is a feeling that only comes after action. You do the thing, survive it, and in the wreckage discover you're more capable than you thought. That's how readiness is built. Not through preparation, through action and reflection. The cycle is act, fail, learn, act better. Not think, plan, prepare, think more, maybe act eventually. Every successful person you admire broke this cycle. They acted with insufficient preparation. They started before they were ready. They figured it out in motion, not in planning. And what looked like confidence was actually just commitment. The decision to move regardless of feeling. You want to know the secret of people who execute while you're still planning? They're not braver. They're not smarter. They've just trained themselves to act before the thinking mind can veto the decision. They feel the impulse to do something, and they do it within minutes or hours. Before doubt can accumulate, before fear can build its case, before the mind can construct elaborate scenarios of failure. They've compressed the gap between intention and execution to nearly zero. You need to do the same. When you feel the pull to act, to send the email, make the call, start the project, you have about 5 minutes before your brain will talk you out of it. In those 5 minutes, your only job is to move. Send the email, make the call, write the first paragraph, buy the domain, register the business. Do the thing that makes it slightly harder to retreat. Because your brain's primary job is keeping you safe, and safe means unchanged. Every time you consider taking a risk, your brain will generate reasons not to. It will find gaps in your plan. It will remind you of past failures. It will conjure scenarios of humiliation. This is its job. You can't stop it. But you can act faster than it can generate objections. This is the discipline. Impulse. immediate action, no pause to reconsider, no time to calculate, no space to doubt. Feel the pull, move immediately. Will you make mistakes this way? Yes. Will some attempts fail? Obviously. Will you occasionally look foolish? Inevitably. But you'll also be building, learning, accumulating experience, developing the thick skin that comes from repeated exposure to risk. And most importantly, you'll be in motion. And motion is the only state from which extraordinary things emerge. Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. You've been focused on the how, the perfect method, the right approach, the safest path. But the why, the reason you want this, is strong enough to carry you through any how, as long as you're actually moving. So what's your why? Not the sanitized version you tell others. The real one. The selfish, ambitious, hungry why that you don't say out loud. That why is powerful enough to fuel action, but only if you use it, only if you let it override your careful, calculating mind and push you into motion. Here's your assignment, and it's non-negotiable. Within 72 hours from right now, take one significant risk. Not a symbolic one, not a practice one, a real one. Something where failure is possible, where judgment might happen, where you'll be genuinely uncomfortable. Start the business. Ask for the raise. Create and ship the art. Have the difficult conversation. Make the move you've been planning for months. Do it imperfectly. Do it scared. Do it without knowing what will happen. But do it. Because 3 days from now, you'll be in one of two states. The person who read this and nodded and went back to thinking. Or the person who acted, who took the risk, who discovered that action, however imperfect, is infinitely more valuable than perfect plans never executed. Choose which person you'll be. The clock is running. Final chapter. You don't have time for permission. No one is coming to tell you it's okay. No authority will appear to validate your dreams. No expert will certify you as ready. No circumstance will perfectly align to signal that now is the moment. You're waiting for permission that will never be granted. And while you wait, your life is evaporating. Every morning you wake up, you have less time than yesterday, fewer opportunities, less energy, a narrower window. This isn't pessimism, it's mathematics. The numbers don't lie. You're running out of chances to become who you could have been, and you're spending those chances waiting for someone to tell you it's time to start living. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But you've inverted this. You've given external validation power over your actions. You've made others' permission the gatekeeper of your potential. This needs to end. Now, here's what you need to understand with absolute clarity. Courage is not a feeling you wait for. It's a decision you make, right now, in this moment, without fanfare, without certainty, without the comfort of knowing it will work out. You decide, I am done waiting. I am done doubting. I am done protecting myself from discomfort by avoiding everything that matters. And then you move, not perfectly, not safely, not when you're ready, now. Because time is not your friend, it's not neutral, it's actively working against you. Every day you're older, every day you have less runway, every day someone younger, hungrier, less encumbered by doubt is gaining on you, or passing you, or already so far ahead you can't even see them anymore. The world doesn't reward the cautious. It never has. It rewards the people who move, who risk, who act despite fear, despite doubt, despite the absence of guarantees. Think about the people who've built something, created something, achieved something. Did they wait for permission? Did they have all the answers before starting? Were they completely ready? No. They were terrified, uncertain, and incomplete, just like you. The only difference, they started anyway. They chose momentum over certainty, progress over perfection, action over endless preparation. And in doing so, they crossed a threshold that most people never reach, the threshold between thinking about living and actually living. Seneca's final wisdom: begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when things settle down or line up or make sense. At once. This, right now, this moment you're in, this is your life. Not the warm-up, not the dress rehearsal, not the planning phase. This is it. The thing itself. And every second you spend waiting for better conditions is a second you'll never get back. So here's your choice. Stripped of all comforting ambiguity, you can keep protecting yourself, keep calculating, keep preparing, keep finding reasons why now isn't quite the right time. You can spend the rest of your life in the safety of potential, never risking the pain of actual attempt. And you'll be safe. You'll avoid failure. You'll never be humiliated. Never be rejected, never discover your limits. You'll also never discover your capabilities, never know what you could have built, never experience the specific kind of aliveness that comes from risking everything for something that matters. You'll arrive at your deathbed, and you will arrive there sooner than you think, having preserved yourself perfectly, intact, unblemished, unused. Is that what you want? Or do you want to arrive there depleted, used up, with scars and stories and the satisfied exhaustion of someone who actually tried, who risked, who failed magnificently and succeeded unexpectedly, and lived with the intensity that comes from treating time like the finite resource it is? Nietzsche's demand: become who you are. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect, not the safe, manageable version that requires no one's disapproval, who you actually are. Underneath the conditioning, underneath the fear, underneath all the stories about what's realistic and appropriate and sensible. That person, the real you, is not safe. They're not cautious. They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They act, they risk, they build, they fail. They get back up, they try again, and they do it all with the full knowledge that time is hunting them, that death is inevitable, that nothing is guaranteed except the opportunity of now. This is your moment, not figuratively, literally. This moment, right here, is the only moment you actually have. The past is gone, the future is imagination. This is real. What will you do with it? Will you use it to plan for a future you may not reach, to prepare for a moment that may never arrive, to strategize about a life you're still not living, or will you use it to move, to take the risk, to start the thing, to make the ask, to do what terrifies you precisely because it terrifies you, and you're done letting fear make your decisions? You don't need permission. You never did. What you need is conviction, the decision that you'd rather fail at what you actually want than succeed at what you don't, that you'd rather risk humiliation than guarantee regret, that you'd rather be criticized for trying than be forgotten for hiding. Make that decision now, not tomorrow, not after you've thought about it more. Now. Because tomorrow is a lie. Tomorrow is where dreams go to die slowly, one delay at a time. Tomorrow is the place you've been storing your potential for years, watching it decay while you told yourself you were being strategic. Today is real. Today is all you have. Today is where courage lives or dies, where you either become the person who acts or remain the person who thinks about acting. Choose. Marcus Aurelius, one final time. Stop whatever you're doing for a moment and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do this anymore? Look at what you're doing right now. Is this worth your life? Not your time, your life. If you died today, Would you be satisfied having spent your final hours doing this? If the answer is no, stop, right now. Stop doing the thing that doesn't matter and start doing the thing that does. You have been gifted with consciousness, with agency, with the ability to choose what you do with the brief window between birth and death. That gift is not for wasting, it's for using, completely, unreservedly, with the full understanding that every moment you're not all in on what matters is a moment you're betraying the potential you were given. So here's the end. Not a gentle conclusion, not a comfortable landing, a demand. Stop reading, stop planning, stop preparing, start doing. Take the risk you've been avoiding, make the move you've been delaying. Act with the urgency of someone who understands that tomorrow is not promised and today is almost over. Be fearless, not because fear is gone. It won't be, but because you've decided fear doesn't get to decide anymore. Be ruthless with your time, your energy, your focus. Give them only to things that matter, things that scare you, things that challenge you, things that, if you pulled them off, would make you unrecognizable to your current self. And most of all, be alive, fully, dangerously, in the way that only people who've accepted their mortality and chosen to live anyway can be alive. You don't have time for permission. You don't have time for doubt. You don't have time for anything except the fierce, immediate pursuit of what you actually want. The clock is running down. What will you do with what's left?